Voices from the States, part of C-SPAN's 50 Capitals tour.
In California's 49th District, Democrat Mike Levin and Republican Diane Harkey debated in the race to succeed Republican Congressman Darrell Issa, who's retiring. This is Half an Hour.
She chairs the State Board of Equalization. He's an attorney for environmental compliance. Now, they square off in the contest for California's 49th District in Congress. Decision 2018. Harkey versus Levin.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this KUSI News Special. I'm Lauren Finney. For the first time since 2001, the 49th Congressional District will have a new representative. For the past 18 years, Darrell Issa has represented that district. In January, Issa announced that he would not seek re-election. And last month, President Donald Trump nominated Issa to be director of the United States Trade and Development Agency. The 49th District covers most of the northern coastal areas of San Diego County, including Encinitas, Carlsbad, Vista, and Camp Pendleton. And as you can see from this map, it also covers a small portion of southern Orange County, including San Clemente. And that brings us to the two candidates who want to be the next representative for the 49th Congressional District. Both candidates are here with us tonight. Welcome to you both. To my right is Democrat Mike Levin. He is an environmental activist who served for several years on the board of the Center for Sustainable Energy and co-founder of Sustain OC in Orange County. For a number of years, Levin was the executive director of the Democratic Party of Orange County, meeting with Barack Obama, and he hosted several fundraisers for Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign for president. And we now turn to Republican candidate Diane Harkey. Currently, Ms. Harkey is a member of the California State Board of Equalization. From 2008 to 2014, she was a member of the California State Assembly, and prior to that served as mayor of Dana Point in Orange County. So once again, we thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Right now, let's get to our discussion tonight, beginning with a headline-driven topic, immigration. We are all aware of the so-called migrant caravan that is headed to the U.S. border with thousands of hopeful immigrants. Ms. Harkey, we will start with you. How should the U.S. deal with this approaching group, and what needs to be done about illegal immigration?
Well, number one, I think it's just criminal that these people were sent out to trek for thousands of miles and with no guarantee of anything. I can't believe a government or an agency or anybody with a bullhorn would take desperate people and ask them to trek a couple thousand miles. That being said, it just makes more point as to why we need good immigration reform and why we need border security. And, you know, we had a bill, no Democrats on board, absolutely zero. It didn't pass. It took care of all of these problems that occur at the border. It allowed for the children and the families and DACA and just about everything you can imagine, plus extra border security for those that would harm our nation and our people, for the, you know, the human traffickers, the drug runners, and the money launderers, which occurs at that border all the time. You know, to me, some of these people are going to be victimized. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And as they move north, and some of them probably will fall off, more are joining them from Mexico. This is just, it's not acceptable. We can't do this. I mean, who is going to take care of all these people when they arrive? So it's put us in a real bad situation right before an election time. It's politically motivated, and I feel sorry for the people that are trying to escape the poverty in Venezuela and other countries. Venezuela is a failed state. It's a failed socialist state, which is why we don't want socialism in the United States.
Okay, Mr. Levin, I'll ask the same question of you. How should the U.S. be dealing with this migrant caravan, and what do you propose be done about immigration in this country?
Well, first, I'd like to thank KUSI for having us tonight for this important debate. It is a crisis, what is happening right now. We need to get back to bipartisan solutions. You know, we had Senator McCain, the late great Senator McCain, and Senator Kennedy years ago had a bipartisan bill to try to advance comprehensive immigration reform. Then we had the Gang of Eight. And unfortunately, what has happened more recently is the policies of this administration have not been successful. We've seen draconian policies like family separation, and yet we still have those who are desperate for safety who are trying to flee Latin American countries. There's no question in my mind that we've got to secure the border. I simply, though, feel as though there are better and cheaper ways to do it than with the president's wall, which I believe is a monument to his own ego. And if you remember during the campaign, he said Mexico would pay for the wall, not the American taxpayers. I think we need to get back to the table, and we need to work towards bipartisan reform. And this is very personal to me. My grandparents on my mom's side were Mexican immigrants. They came to this country when they were very young. They didn't have any money or any formal education or even speak English, but they worked incredibly hard, and they did well for themselves and for future generations. My mom likes to call them the dreamers of their day. I want to make sure that we're taking care of people, treating them with respect and decency. If people are here and they're committing crimes, they should not be here. We should deport them. On the other hand, though, if people are here and they're doing well by our society, by our economy, we should treat them with the respect and dignity that we all deserve.
Well, it kind of leads to the next question, a hot topic for the state of California in particular, and right here in San Diego locally. Do you support sanctuary states and sanctuary cities?
Well, here's what I think. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there that's been tossed around. When you speak with law enforcement about this particular issue, they will tell you that it makes sense for immigrants to be able to communicate with law enforcement, to be able to report crimes or to testify in court. That's the crux of the matter. And again, if people are here and they are committing crimes, whether they be violent crimes or serious crimes, I believe they should be deported. But if people are contributing positively to our economy, and we understand the importance of immigration in Southern California, the important contributions that are being made, if people are contributing, I don't think we should treat them as second class. I think we should treat them with respect, dignity, and decency, and that's what I would intend to do, and that's why we need comprehensive immigration reform.
I'm glad that we agree on comprehensive immigration reform, and I know that you're going to be Pelosi's pet back there and will not do anything with a uniform caucus. And I really cannot believe that you're saying that the sanctuary state and sanctuary city policies are okay. They're terrible. That's why I have law enforcement support. I have Border Patrol support up and down the line, because they know how these allow criminals into our neighborhoods. There's ponga boats, there's drug running, and now we've got 7,000 people and picking up more along the way, and you think it's not okay to have a wall? What are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to confront that? That's how that wall got down there in San Diego to begin with, is because there were 300 and 400 people that were storming across the border. Now we're going to have 7,000? How are you going to deal with that, Mike? I mean, it's ridiculous. We have to, at some point, draw a line, and we have to prevent people from coming because they're being used, abused, they're going to be human trafficked, they're going to be hungry, they're going to need places to stay. Are you going to open up your front door and let them come in? I don't think so.
I really go ahead and jump in.
I really think that, you know, the sanctuary states, sanctuary cities have allowed criminal behavior. They were intended for probably a good purpose once. I still question that, but I think it's created a stage of lawlessness for us, and we cannot have law enforcement not cooperating with one another.
Okay, Ms.
They have to cooperate.
Mr. Levin, to respond to that, if you will.
Well, I support comprehensive reform and common sense, and there was a group that the Southern Poverty Law Center called an anti-immigrant hate group that endorsed your campaign. And when you look at your background on this issue, you started your political career by funding a state ballot measure to create a state deportation task force, and you've been on the radical extreme of the immigration policy in the California Assembly. I don't think that's what most people in the district are looking for.
Open borders,
with respect.
You know,
no, I'm for safety. Look, I've got 2 young children at home. I care very much.
But you don't live there. You just moved into the neighborhood.
No,
you moved
I'm from
South. You may have been born here, but you've not lived here. Do not lie, because I know what you've done.
I know what I've done too. I've lived in South Orange County most of my adult life.
That is absolutely not true.
It is. We bought our Ms. Harkey, with respect, we bought our home in 2014 with no
Congressman Issa.
With no intent. With no intent.
You're a carpetbagger in the neighborhood.
With no intent to run. I am from South Orange County, and I'm proud to be in California.
You're going to be in D.C., and then you're going to be trying to represent a community that you really don't know.
With respect, Ms. Harkey, anyone that knows me knows how false of a charge that is. I'm proud to have been raised in South Orange County, to be sending my kids to public school there, to to have attended public school myself in South Orange County. I don't send my kids to fancy private schools, and I'm proud of the community in which I'm proud of the community in which I live. I went to Saddleback Valley schools, and my kids go to Capistrano Unified Schools, and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of our community, as I know you are.
Okay, I am a third-generation immigrant, just as you are, and quite honestly, I went out with Bracero workers and peeled onions just to earn enough money for my Barbie doll. I have really not had an easy job, an easy life. And then I moved into the West Covina area, and I was working at 17. And what made me really, or allowed me, let's just say, to really have a life and to get on with my life was being in California, the community college system and the college system, which I went to as an adult. And I worked my way through. I started at 23 and worked my way through. It's absolutely great. And right now our kids can't get into schools. They're having to go out of state, and we're taking in all from across the nation. We're ruining California. We have to get California back on track to serving real California.
I've never been prouder to be a Californian, but we'll talk about that later.
I'll stop you both there, although I will say I appreciate the spirited debate, but this is a great segue into our next topic, of course, which is the economy, and speaking of California. So, Mr. Levin, under the Trump administration, the economy is doing significantly well. Employment for women, African American and Latino workers is at an all-time high. The gross domestic product is back up, as I'm sure you know, the high 3s and even 4s. So President Trump is talking about additional cuts for the middle class. So what is your take on the Trump economy? What would you change? What would you agree with in anything that the Trump administration is doing?
Well, the economy is doing well for some, and the reality is that the tax policy that was put in place by the Republicans in Congress and the Trump administration was uniquely unfair to California because of the cap on the state and local tax deductions at $10,000, because of the cap on the mortgage interest deduction. Well, it's true that the stock market has been doing relatively well, although not nearly as well in the last few days. It's also true that wages have been flat, even going down when adjusted for inflation. What I would say is that we need an economy that works for everyone, not just those at the top. And I want to innovate and invest in research and development in things like biotechnology, life sciences, clean energy technology, and those jobs for the future that are going to help position our district in the greater San Diego region to be at the forefront of economic growth in 10 and 20 years. I don't think it makes sense to have a uniquely unfair policy. And if you want to see a great op-ed on this, take a look. Last year there was an op-ed in the Orange County Register, again, in which it talked about how California was really singled out by this bill. And the author of that op-ed was Congressman Darrell Issa, who voted against this tax package and knew how uniquely unfair it was for California.
Ms. Harkey, how would you evaluate how the president's economy is? I also wrote an
op-ed, and I went back to D.C. with Sebastian Ridley Thomas, of our chair of Rev and Tax in the Assembly. We went back and we worked for California, and we were able to get some concessions for California. But I might remind you that the state of California did not have to implement tax uniformity, or tax conformity rather, with the federal government. They could have allowed us to still deduct our property tax. They did not. They took advantage of the Trump tax cuts to actually increase their coffers. And in fact, people in this district will get over $1,900 on average, $1,900 less tax because of the Trump tax reform. Businesses are doing very well. We already have a ton of R&D in biotech, biomed, life sciences. That is what's going to be medical for the future. And that's why I am totally against a single-payer health plan. I mean, Bernie Sanders is coming out for this gentleman this weekend to trump his $32 trillion Medicare for all, which means you may not keep your health care if you like it. You may not keep your work health care if you like it, and Medicare will never be the same. I am totally against his policies, his socialized policies, and the people that are supporting him. I think we're doing well. We need to keep California on the right track.
Several things to unpack there, if I might. One is that about a month ago, Republicans in Congress had an opportunity to vote on the extension of that SALT deduction being capped at $10,000, and they voted to make that permanent. And you would caucus with the Republicans, and if Republicans maintain control of the House, they would vote to make that $10,000 cap permanent. I don't think that's what we need. Second is you referenced a study regarding health care. That study was funded by the Koch brothers, and it also showed that overall health care spending would actually decrease by $2 trillion. And I know the Koch brothers have helped to fund. I know the Koch brothers have helped to fund your campaign, and that's okay. But I'll be happy to post the link to that study, which actually is a Koch brothers funded study, which shows overall health care costs would decrease by $2 trillion. Well, people would get health care. However, I don't think we're going to have a Medicare for All system overnight, and that's why I've said that the number one thing that we need to do is protect the Affordable Care Act and fight to lower prescription drug prices.
You have tried to have it. No, he's tried to have it both ways. I'm funded by the Koch brothers. What, I get $5,000? You've got over $3 million from Code Blue. And there's other lean left that came into your campaign. Don't tell me about who's funding. You're outspending me by probably 4 to 1 on your campaign.
With over 170.
Plus there's PAC money coming in from Nancy Pelosi. You're going to be Pelosi's pet.
I'm not going to be anyone's pet.
You are going to be Pelosi's pet.
I'm going to be a voice.
You will not have a voice of your own. She has funded you. She's paid for you, and you are going to toe the mark, or you'll be out.
I look forward to proving you wrong.
Well, you won't, because I'll be there.
We'll see.
Thank you.
We'll see.
And I'll stop you both there, which leads to another sense of political divide and partisanship in the country right now, and of course, most certainly in the House of Congress, House of Representatives. Mr. Levin, what can you do to work with Republicans, because the divide is not getting anything done? And I think it's fair to say that many voters are frustrated with a lack of things getting done because of the partisanship. What can you do to work across the aisle?
I am frustrated by the toxic partisanship and the toxic rhetoric and discourse in our country. I've never seen it worse than it is today, and I know that the residents of the 49th District want members of Congress who are going to go and roll up their sleeves and try to get something done and solve problems for our local communities rather than try to create more problems. And that's what I've done with regard to clean energy and sustainability. I have worked across the aisle, including in Sacramento and in Washington, on legislation and policy that has had significant Republican support. And I know we can do that again on a wide variety of issues, whether it's on trying to lower prescription drug prices or trying to achieve common sense immigration reform. I think we can get things done across the aisle. And ultimately, we need members of Congress who are not partisan. And Ms. Harkey's record as a California Assembly member demonstrates that she was one of the most partisan members of the Assembly, voting 100% of the time with the American Conservative Union and only 12% of the time with the Sierra Club, the League of Conservation Voters, 0% with Planned Parenthood, but 93% with the National Rifle Association. And I don't think that's the type of bipartisan leadership we need.
I know that in previous debates, Ms. Harkey has said that you would vote to impeach President Trump. Would you support a democratically led effort to impeach the president?
No, I am not running on an impeachment platform, but I do believe in the rule of law. I think the rule of law still matters in this country, and we've got to allow the investigation of Mr. Mueller to move forward unimpeded by politics. And Devin Nunes, as head of the House Intelligence Committee, has withheld relevant testimony and information from Mr. Mueller's committee. And I don't think there should be two sets of rules. There shouldn't be two sets of rules, one for the president and his closest family members and surrounded by others that are getting away with things, and then one set of rules for the rest of us. That's not how our constitutional democracy is supposed to function. And under Article 1 of the Constitution, it is the responsibility of the Congress to exercise appropriate oversight, and that's all we're talking about, is appropriate oversight. And I'll be very pleased when Devin Nunes is no longer the chair of the House Intelligence Committee and when Mr. Schiff is. And as far as resist, because you like to say I resist, well, I resist intolerance, I resist injustice, I resist inequality, and I resist dishonesty.
You're going to resist everything because that's your party.
We have record dishonesty from this administration, and you know that to be the case.
Absolutely not true.
I want to make sure that before we run out of time,
we have to get into this resist. Who has started resist? It's been California, and who's leading California? This is a policy that's cost our state tremendously. It's cost us in every area, and we are still suing and being sued by the federal government. Resist is what's made the sanctuary state. Resist is what's caused everybody to start swarming across the border. Resist on the California contingent, which is running the House. Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, they're not going to be comfortable until this president president is going through impeachment hearings. Now, luckily, it will not make it through the Senate, but it's going to cause chaos and mayhem just until they get another election. You know that's what it is.
With respect, I'm not about...
The Republicans break ranks, which is part of a problem with Republicans leading the House. They do break ranks. Democrats hang together regardless. There was no Democrat support for immigration. There was no Democrat support for any of the tax reform. Our two senators were absent, as were every member of our delegation. That's why we got no consideration or little. And I went back and we got as much as we could because they know we're an important state. But bottom line is the state of California, with their resist policies, has made it impossible for cooperation with D.C. Well, Republicans will break. Okay. They will come over. But we need a strong immigration reform, and nobody was there from the Democrat side.
With respect,
I believe in cooperation. And we will definitely give you both a chance to continue this conversation after we take a quick break. Thank you both. We'll be right back.
You're watching a KUSI News special report, Battle for the 49th, Harkey versus Levin.
Welcome back, and we're glad you've joined us. We are talking tonight with the two candidates for the 49th Congressional District, Republican Diane Harkey and Democrat Mike Levin. Thank you again, both, for staying with us, and we'll allow you to start this segment. Mr. Levin, unfortunately, the United States leads the world in gun violence and mass shootings, and we've seen pleas for change from families of victims and survivors. The politicians talk. Nothing seems to get done, as we've talked about in the last segment. What changes would you make, and how would you actually compromise to get gun control accomplished?
Well, we've got to do something about the epidemic of gun violence in our country, and I think we need responsible gun ownership and we need common sense gun safety measures. I was very honored that Fred Guttenberg joined us this past weekend in the 49th District. He lost his daughter tragically in the Parkland High School shooting in Florida. He was with us talking about common sense, talking about things that are supported by 80 or 90% of the residents of our district, and ultimately universal background checks, banning bump stocks, making sure that we fully fund research into gun violence, and getting weapons of war out of our schools, off our streets, and out of our communities. And Ms. Harkey and I differ significantly on this issue. In fact, she was endorsed by a group that called Parkland a false flag conspiracy. Ms. Harkey, I think you owe Mr. Guttenberg an apology for that. She also was funded by the National Rifle Association and has a 93% lifetime rating, and as a member of the California Assembly, voted twice to have high-capacity magazines more readily available. Also voted after the Sandy Hook massacre in Connecticut to make it easier to arm teachers and janitors. I don't think any of those are the type of solutions that we need, and I am honored to be endorsed by groups like Moms Demand Action. And just to be clear, we're not looking to take away anyone's Second Amendment rights. What we are looking to do is figure out why 35,000 people a year are dying because of guns. And it isn't just an issue of mental health. Every country in the world, every industrialized nation in the world has significant issues related to mental health, but not every nation in the world has this concern with gun violence. This is a unique issue to the United States. We've got to get to the bottom of it. We need common sense, and if Congress won't act, as Congresswoman Gabby Gifford said, if Congress will not act on gun violence, it is time to elect a new Congress.
Ms. Harkey, I want to allow you to respond. Do you believe there should be gun control?
I do want to respond to that. That's absolutely ludicrous. I do believe in universal background checks. I think that's a must. But what I also believe in is the 10th Amendment. Now, if we have a statewide or a nationwide gun control measure, if California's are more restrictive, does that mean that California has to be looser? I mean, you can't have the same gun regulation for Massachusetts that you have for Montana. It does not work. And I do believe that states have the right through the 10th Amendment to set their own laws. We're not there to dictate what every state will do, but we are there to protect our own. And I do think that universal background checks are just, part of the program. They should be. But the bigger problem that we've had with many of these school shootings has been inability of, or unwillingness, shall we say, of authorities to cooperate with one another, either because there was a minor or we had some policy that did not allow them to cooperate. There was wide knowledge of who it was that was committing these crimes. They had telegraphed it, they had Facebooked it, but it was not communicated, and that's criminal. And so we really need to allow our communities, Orange County, San Diego, have strict policies. And yes, if teachers somewhere are already okay with CCWs, why not? Why not have that extra protection? There's nothing more inviting to gun violence than a gun-free zone. So I don't agree with nationwide bans, but I do believe that California has some very strict regulations that they would not like to give up to go along with the nationwide ban.
Okay, I have to switch topics here just so we can...
Very briefly, the National Rifle Association, they want concealed carry reciprocity, so they would want for the gun laws of West Virginia or Alabama to become the gun laws of San Diego. I don't think that's right, and I want to ask again, Ms. Harkey, if I may, I want to clarify.
I want to clarify. Okay, $2,500 from the NRA does not make me a puppet.
A 93% lifetime record with the NRA.
I am a strong Second Amendment supporter.
I wanted to ask Ms. Harkey if you would apologize to Fred Guttenberg, who tragically lost his daughter in Parkland. You've been endorsed by a group that called Parkland a false flag conspiracy theory.
Parkland was a tragedy, but what you're forgetting is that there was no communication between authorities. That was a tragedy.
To Mr. Guttenberg, who tragically lost.
Why don't you apologize to the other people that are being killed and held criminally?
I wasn't endorsed.
Held by the criminals that are invading all around with weapons. I mean, look at what happened to Kate Steinle up in San Francisco.
I wasn't endorsed by a group that called Parkland a false flag conspiracy theory.
But you're endorsed by the Open Borders group. You're endorsed by anyone that's against law enforcement. You want chaos and no law.
Not true. A lot of law enforcement knows very well where I stand.
I know they do. That's why they've all endorsed me.
I will be a strong supporter of theirs, and there are major groups that have refused to endorse you and have stayed out of this race.
That is not true.
That's
not true. I have statewide. I have Border Patrol. I have San Diego Sheriffs. I have
a group that called Parkland a false flag conspiracy theory, which you've had on your website for a month.
You've got a few on yours. I have to stop
both of you here so we can allow you both to get to your closing statement.
And the criminals.
Okay.
We want to thank you both for joining us tonight, and we do want to take some time so that both of you can present your ideas, give a closing statement, if you will, to the voters in the 49th Congressional District. Ms. Harkey, will begin with you if you want to address the voters and give a minute of closing statements.
Okay, I have represented this district for a long time, 10 years, and quite honestly, I've had a private banking experience that I did for 30 years. I've raised a daughter here. I love this district. I like the biotech, biomed, life sciences, and all the military contracting that is available here. There are opportunities. Kids should not be afraid. They should not be afraid to grow up right now. There's so many opportunities on the horizon with the community colleges and the college system. And to turn this district over to somebody who's basically been a political operative and a lobbyist is not the way to go. I think we need real people doing real work and representing the community. I will represent this district to D.C., not D.C. to this district. Thank you. I ask for your support. I ask for your vote.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Levin, I'll allow you to address the voters in the 49th.
Well, I'd like again to thank KUSI for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight, and I'd like to thank my wife Chrissy at home and our two young kids, Jonathan and Elizabeth. It's been an extraordinary honor the last 2 years to get to know so many thousands of you throughout the 49th Congressional District. My background is a lifetime of trying to protect the environment, our air and our water, the clean energy jobs of the future, and I believe that we can position this district with those great jobs and the great research and development in biotech and life sciences. I want to be a representative for all of the people of this district, not just those who support me, and I will have an open door and an open mind, and ultimately I have never been prouder to be a Californian. My opponent recently was interviewed, and she said if California, or I should say if Democrats retake the House, quote, it'll be like California all over the nation. And I think that's an awkward thing to say when you're running for our great state of California to serve as one of our representatives. I'm proud of the fact that we protect our environment. I'm proud of the fact that we innovate, that we treat each other with respect, that we celebrate our diversity, that we have economic opportunity.
Thank you, Mr.
I'd be honored to serve as your representative in Congress, and I hope you vote on November 6th.
Thank you both. Appreciate you again for being here.
Not true.
We'll see you
Not
both election night Tuesday, November 6th. Appreciate the spirited debate.
Thank you.
And we'll be live again this afternoon as Defense